Good morning, everybody. How are we doing this morning? Great. Excellent. It's nice to see all these smiling faces ready to learn, ready to talk. What are we talking about today? Performance concerns. That's kind of a heavy topic. Is that real? Is that a real thing? Performance concerns? Okay. So we're going to dig in a little bit. We're going to have some fun with it. Just a little bit of background. How many of you have seen me present, or heard me, dealt with me, endured me before? Okay. So welcome back. It's good to see you all again. And then newbies, all right, welcome for being here. My name's Pete. I am a former school principal. I was a principal in Reno for several years. That's all I'm going to tell you about that story. That's the end of that. Although I do have a good assistant principal story if you're interested later from Reno. And then I was a principal in Spokane, Washington for 8 years after that. I currently live right across the state line from Spokane in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Anybody been to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho? Oh, high five, young lady. Lisa? When were you there? 4 years ago.
But my sister lived, I never lived in Portland.
Okay. Well, there you go. It's a beautiful place, huh? We like that spot. So that's where I live. That's where I come from. And I'm excited to be here to talk about this with y'all today. We have some ground to cover. It's going to be exciting. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time with introductions. I do want to start us with our learning target for the day. There's one simple target. We're going to read it together. Ready? Here we go. On three. 1, 2, 3. Doesn't that sound reasonable? Don't you think we can do that in 75 minutes? Oh, yeah, I think so. If you need to go get your free items, you go ahead and get started. Quit giving me grief up here. So that's our plan for the day. I'm going to take some of this material out of this resource. This is a book I wrote a couple years ago. It's called Lead On, Motivational Lessons for School Leaders. And I'm really excited about kind of the lessons that are in there and the lessons about handling performance concerns, about staying motivated, about being true to ourselves, about not burning out, about staying passionate and interested in changing the world and changing our schools and changing the dynamics of the groups and the folks that we work with. So that's kind of the big idea. I have another big idea that comes from this sense right here. You know how we all have a word? You know, word of the year or my 2020 word. And some people say, well, I'm going to have 12 words and I'm going to have 7 words. Well, I have one word that kind of persists throughout all my existence, and that's strive. And I really believe in this concept of we always have room for improvement. We can always do things better. No matter how good we are at something, there's always a little bit room for growth, for improvement, for continuing excellence. So that's kind of the spirit that I embrace all this work, is there's opportunities with human beings to reach our potential and to strive towards our potential, even though we may never reach the potential. It's the pursuit that keeps us moving forward. So I'm kind of excited to be able to share with you this work as we engage today around performance concerns. So you should have, near you, someplace, some index cards. And my guess is that you came to this session for a particular reason, whether it's theoretical or generic, that you just want to know, hey, at some point I might have to deal with somebody who has performance concerns, or it's intimate and personal and real right now, where you have somebody that's not meeting expectations and you need some strategies, you need some approaches for how to handle this situation. Whatever it might be, I encourage you on one of these index cards, if you can reach them. And in the back, they're on the table with the water. If you got them, great, thank you. Just jot some notes down. Just freestyle. Just write it down. Just mind dump on there. You're not necessarily going to read it to anybody or share it with anybody if you don't feel comfortable doing that. I would suggest that you don't write names down, especially if the person that you have a concern about is sitting at the table right next to you. I do, however, just want you to put it out there so that it's fresh and clean and it's real in your mind as far as why you're here, what you're thinking about, what you need help with. All right, I see some pens have slowed down or stopped, so I'm assuming that you're in that place where you know exactly what it is that has driven you here today, that has compelled you to have this conversation. I was going to share a video. I think I'm going to skip the video. How many of you seen the video where the two people get stuck on the escalator? Is it more appropriate? Is there a more appropriate video than here to do that? This is like my 4th or 5th year here, and I tell you what, that escalator, one of those 2 escalators has been functioning as stairs every time I've been here. And this year, both of them. Anyway, the theory behind that video is the 2 people are on the escalator, and the escalator just stops, and they're like, little help, you know? So a lot of times, we just do what we do. So if we're in leadership roles, if we're in leadership positions and we supervise others, we just go on about our business and do whatever it is that we do. And when things don't work out the way we want them to do, we ask for help. We wait for someone to rescue us somehow, right? And so instead of that, we want to be really intentional about taking some steps to do business as unusual, to try to change outcomes, to try to change the mindsets of the folks that we're around, to improve practice, especially if we've got somebody who maybe is underperforming a little bit. We've got to change some dynamics. We need to change the situation. We need to change the culture to help with that. And what I have found in my travels and working with schools and principals all across the country is that there are 4 major ways that we tend to respond or react to performance concerns. The first is we send in a spy. So we got a teacher who's underperforming, we have a staff member who's underperforming, and so we say to an instructional coach or an assistant principal or a mentor or somebody, hey, go in that classroom and tell me what's going on. You know, just kind of go look around, tell me if you see, what you notice, what you're worried about, and then come back and report to me. Okay, so that's one thing that frequently happens. And instructional coaching is a fantastic initiative that is here to help and support us, unless it's used unethically like this, where we're sending folks in as spies. That's one way. The second is our leader kind of takes on the role of ostrich and says, oh my gosh, I'm working so hard to build relationships and to build cultures. If I start addressing a performance concern with a staff member, then oh my God, word's going to get out and all the staff members are going to be talking about me behind their back and they're going to wonder who's next and it's going to be, oh, so I'm just going to kind of pretend like it's not that big of a deal. So I'm just going to kind of leave it alone. That's number 2. Number 3 is we send in the Trojan horse and we observe and we have feedback conversations and we go along the course of the school year, and then at the end of the year when evals are due, we ding them on a couple things. This was unsatisfactory. This did not meet standard. This, whatever the metric and whatever language you use in your districts is, that's a problem. And it's kind of a sneak attack because the person didn't necessarily see it coming. We didn't have those tough conversations along the way. We just hit them with the eval at the end, and then they're going to have to deal with that. And number 4 is what we do is called the dance of the lemons, where we take this person and you're underperforming, so I'm going to change grade levels. Instead of 4th grade, you're going to teach 2nd grade. Or instead of the AP class, you're going to teach the intro to algebra. Or I actually saw this in a district once. I was working with a district in which the principals all got together at one of the principals' meetings, and they each wrote the name of 2 staff members on index cards, literally, just like I asked you to do. And then they put all the cards in the center of the table, and then everybody grabbed 2. And that was the transfer period. That was the involuntary transfer period. And so everybody had a chance to say, okay, well, I've had my turn with these 2 people, now it's your turn. And then they get someone else's 2 people. So we do a lot of things in the spirit of Dance of the Lemons, where we move you from this team to that team, we move you from this grade level to that grade level, I'm going to move your classroom from here to there, hoping that you will be so upset with that and so uncomfortable with that move or that change that you'll just leave. You'll quit, you'll resign, you'll transfer on your own. Okay, so those are the 4 that I tend to see a lot. And unfortunately, most of those don't work very much. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to access your own archives, your own memory, your own experiences. Have you seen any or all of the above at play in your work, in the environments in which you have been or led? And what was the outcome of that approach, that strategy? So take a moment. If you haven't already said hello to the people that are sitting next to you, this is a great time to say hello, good morning, how you doing, good to see you. My name is so-and-so. If you don't like the people you're sitting with, this is a good time to stand up and move and sit someplace else. That's fine. And share your story with each other and just kind of see what's out there. What was the outcome of these events, these strategies? I'm interested to have us kind of hear a few of the outcomes of any or all of these strategies. So what did you hear? What have you experienced? What did you share? Let's share a couple. Yes, ma'am.
I've done the first one.
You've done the first one. All right. I'm going to bring
to
the...
look.
Do you mind if I bring this over? Because
Sure.
you're on camera, too. So.
Oh, great. I have brought my instructional coach into classrooms to identify some areas where people needed support and to help them during our grade level collaboration.
Okay, and how did that work out?
Well, this is my instructional coach, so how did that work out?
Oh my, now we have a brand new dynamic in the room. All right. So would you like to speak to this?
I feel like in some ways it's been productive. For some teachers, so it's kind of funny. One of the things that I wrote on my card is, how can I change the way that staff members perceive me and view me as a support? So I actually taught in this district in multiple grade levels for 13 years, left, and then came back in this position. So I'm viewed in a lot of different ways. Sometimes I'm viewed as that sweet kid that we worked with, and sometimes I'm viewed as someone who is too bold in my suggestions. And so how can I mend some of those relationships where I'm perceived as being too, I don't know, too much? And then how can I be perceived as someone who can contribute to others? So, I don't know. Sometimes
Those
I'm a bad guy.
Those are legit questions. You said, the last thing you said was, sometimes I'm a bad guy.
Yeah, like
Okay.
there's some. I'm not. I'm really not. I promise.
She's that sweet kid at heart.
Wrap their heads around the fact that when she goes in, it's not punitive at all. It's as an assistant or in a liaison between the administration and the classroom teacher. She's a help for them, and they aren't wrapping their heads around that very well.
So folks are having a hard time. Yeah, so folks are having a hard time understanding that the coach is there as 100% support. The evaluator is here as the heavy. And the complicating factor here is that they're there together. Even if you're not in the room at the same exact time. You're there together, and folks, and what you just said is folks aren't yet wrapping their heads around the idea that coaches support, I'm going to eval, the coaches 100% support, and there's a difference. And this is the first year of coaching. Okay, and what's your name? Stacy. Your paper says Stacy on it. I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with you people. I'm just messing. All right. Okay, so that's a great example of all the best intentions, right? To bring the coach in to be supportive, and gosh, for some reason, staff isn't embracing this reality of support. Okay, thank you for starting us. Who else? Who has another example? I know you got thrown off by the fact that I said you're going to be on camera too, but it's going to be all right. Get your back to the camera. You're fine. Yes, ma'am.
Similar situation where the coach is there as a support, but it's okay. The only people receiving on a coaching cycle are the ones that are ineffective or needs improvement on their evaluation. So it's viewed as a punishment.
So the only ones that get coaching are the ones that are in trouble somehow. Okay. I'm not surprised that it's viewed as a punishment. Interesting. Okay. What else? Yes, ma'am. You tried the lemon effect? And how did that go?
It depends. When you're doing it to another school, depends on if you're the winner or the loser.
Yeah, if you do it to another school, depends. I want everyone to hear this. I'm coming back. Excuse me.
You know, we've done that before. But we've also done the lemon effect as the instructional coach and the principal by moving some staff members around. But in that concept, we did it to try to put them in a place they could be successful. So I think that sort of works, because sometimes you put them in a position of like remediation versus instruction in the classroom, you can be successful with them and everyone wins. So lemon effect can work. You can make lemonade with it sometimes. And sometimes you can get rid of someone that you're like, it's somebody else's problem now.
Yes, okay, so that's real. And so I love that you brought up the idea of making lemonade, first of all, and also the idea of the mindset behind what we're actually doing. Because moving someone to another grade level with a different mindset has a totally different impression. Like if you're moving somebody because, you're not good at third grade, and I want you to be uncomfortable, so I'm going to move you to fifth grade, and hopefully you'll be really uncomfortable there. Because you always talk about how you want younger kids, so I'm going to give you fifth graders so you can be more, so that you'll want to say, I'm not going to do that, I'm out. That's different than saying, I'm going to move you to fifth grade because I really believe you have the skill set to be successful with fifth grade, and there's a mentor teacher in fifth grade that can really kind of usher you along and provide the support that you need. If I'm doing it with that intent, it's a totally different ballgame. It's let's make lemonade as opposed to let's get rid of these lemons because I have a sour taste in my mouth. It's a different beast, right? So our mindset and what leads us to our actions is something we need to be acutely aware of. All right, another example. Yes, ma'am.
We talked at our table,
I'm coming in. I'm going to get in your bubble. Here we go.
the elephant in the room, as far as we can't find teachers to fill positions in the state of Indiana. with 200 and some special ed openings available right now. And so addressing sometimes the deficits, if they quit, you're up the creek because a sub can't do it and understand it. And so we have people who aren't qualified sometimes in positions because that they have a heartbeat and they're breathing, and then we hope they like kids. And so it's just a tough position. I've been in it a long time. I used to get stacks of applications, and I could go through the stack and weed it out and pick the best 10 that I wanted to interview. I have positions available right now where I don't get an application.
Yeah, so that's a challenge because you can't fire your way to better performance if there's no one that's going to come in and take over. Aha. Thank you for bringing that up. What else? Any others? Yes, ma'am.
I guess I've used combinations of these sometimes, but the toughest one for me, or toughest ones, because there have been multiple, are when there are personal losses or illnesses that impact the person. So you have to try to find that balance between, like, how do you give them a little bit of grace as a human, but still hold them accountable evaluatively when they've suffered the loss of a child or they're dying themselves, but they're not doing what they're supposed to for kids.
Oh, yeah, that's a real challenge. And it's hard to kind of balance the understanding of whether or not someone's going through something right now. Is this a temporary thing that we're just going to withstand the storm and we know you're going to emerge okay at the other side of it? Or is this something that, gosh, we need to pull the plug because I don't see a light at the end of this tunnel. It's not going to get better. So that's a tough one as well. How much grace do we show people? Oh my gosh, these are great situations. Sorry, I can't help you with any of them. Nah, I'm just kidding. Okay, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate you thinking through that. What I found in my travels is that these 4 typically don't work nearly as well as strategy number 5. And so strategy number 5 kind of looks like this. Number 1, and for some of you who are thinking, man, I have a performance concern right now, it's a little bit of a challenge to say, well, a lot of the work that we do to address performance concerns is done proactively. It's done already. And that's to set clear expectations about exactly what performance looks like when it's done well. There's no mystery, there's no mystique. It is described, it is defined, there's a picture painted of it, you can see it, you can smell it, you can taste it. You know exactly what it looks like when you perform to high levels. And I'm a strong believer in this quote, and I think I have this coming up in a second. It's clarity precedes competence. And I was a big fan of Rick and Becky DeFore with the professional learning communities work that they did, and Becky in her keynote addresses always used that expression, clarity precedes competence. If you want to get good at anything, you need to be exceptionally clear about what it is you're getting good at and what it looks like when high performance occurs. Because in the absence of knowing what high performance concerns is, what do? We do the best we can with what we've got, right? So the expectation is, one of 2 things happens. We do the best we can with what we've got, or we operate like water, which means we find the path of least resistance, and we do whatever we can to get by. So it's incumbent upon us as leaders to help our folks be really clear about this is actually your target. This is what you're trying to accomplish. It looks like this, and build that together. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is to make sure as we proceed in the work together that we are offering all sorts of descriptive feedback and engaging in all sorts of dialogue and interaction back and forth about performance and about how it compares with the standard, with the expectation that we've set. So this is what I'm seeing in your classroom. This is the expectation we've set. Let's talk a little bit about how they match, how they overlap, and how there might be some kind of gap in between. Step number 3 is when we do have a concern, when we first see it, when we first notice it, we name it as a concern and put it on the table. One of the challenges in leadership is to be able to have tough conversations and maintain relationships simultaneously. And I have found in my experience that some of the strongest relationships are built upon some of those tough conversations. One of 2 things will happen when you lay down a concern with somebody and start having real conversations with them. One is they will say, I'm not cut out for this. I'm not going to meet that expectation. Sorry, I'm out. Or, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I want. I'm totally going to get after this, and we're going to make it happen. And either one works for me, right? Number 4 is to make sure that as we proceed, not only do I reiterate what the expectation is, but I also provide all sorts of opportunities and resources for you to meet that expectation. So if there's content knowledge that you don't have, I'm going to help provide you the opportunities to learn that. If there are instructional pedagogical strategies that you haven't learned yet, I'm going to provide those for you and get you to that PD so that you learn those strategies and then give you feedback along the way as you implement them a little bit. And then step number 5 is trust that you're going the right direction. There's so much self-doubt in leadership, isn't there? I mean, I'm imagining that most of us in the room are in some role with leadership, and so there's a lot of self-doubt here. Am I doing the right thing? Am I headed the right direction? Did I say that right? You have to believe that if you're engaging in those first 4 steps with some integrity and honesty, yes, you're headed the right direction, you're doing the right work. So it comes back to this. And I want you to think about the card that you wrote down and the situation, the scenario that you've got right now. And I want you to ask the question that we kind of posed from the back here about the dance of the lemons. Are you trying to make lemonade or are you trying to get rid of this sour lemon? What is your goal in this situation? As you think about your person, your scenario in that card, what do you want? What's the ideal outcome from this? And I'll ask you to reflect on that just a little bit. And when you're ready, if you're comfortable with this, just lean over to your nearest neighbor and say, all right, I'm going to confess, this is what I want. And put it out there. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Gored him. Just gutted him. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to allow you to have that conversation with your neighbor or with yourself through self-reflection and not have to share it aloud with all of us, what your intent is, just in case the video finds its way onto the internet. And I'm going to take us to this place. This is my personal opinion, and the work that I've done with leaders all across the country, kind of come to the realization that if our goal is anything different than this that I put up on the screen, then we need to take another really deep, hard look at ourselves before we do anything with the performance concern in front of us. So, provide unyielding support and encouragement with a sincere desire to assist the teacher's growth and productivity in order to help students achieve and perform until there's no more blood left in that turnip. Okay, you fight until the fight's done, is what I'm saying. Because it's for kids, it's to help our adults. Very few teachers, in my experience, have entered the profession for the quote-unquote wrong reasons. Most of our educator colleagues are there for kids to make the difference in the community, to help, to provide, right, with goodness in their hearts and a good spirit, with best of intentions. So we want to maximize that as much as we can until we realize it just isn't going to work. And that's a ways down the road for most folks. So when we're talking about performance concerns for the rest of our time here this morning, I just want to make sure that we're clear on something. There's a wide range of performance concerns. It goes all the way from punching a kid in the face, all the way to just not good performance, not good teaching. And we're going to be more on this side, because there are some things that are so egregious, you really can't even have a conversation, right? It's just, I'm sorry, that's it. And you got to go. And I have stories about that I'm not going to share with you, and you know what they are. You have stories about that too, where people have performed so poorly that there's just no place for that in the profession. We're talking about that gray area of, gosh, this isn't good teaching, and there's got to be better teaching, and you've got to be able to improve. You've got to give us more. That's the place where we are, right? So here's our quote from Becky DeFore, and I'm going to share with you this idea of the kind of the performance rubric, and you can gauge, again, looking at your card, looking at your scenario, looking at the person that you're working with, as you think about these kind of 4 steps, and you have in your own districts your own 4-point rubrics. I've worked in places that have 5-point rubrics. I'm hoping it's not a binary system where you're either passable or not okay. I hope it's bigger than that, where there's gradients of performance in many regards, kind of like this. So we have our needs improvement category, right? You got your fair to middling, you got your competent, and then you have your exceptional. And you all know the difference in that. The key is to make sure that our people know the difference with great clarity from one to the other. and that we're able to identify when your performance isn't meeting what you think it's meeting, that we're able to have that conversation so that you start to see the difference between your performance and what the expectation really is. And there's a big part of this work that goes there. So here's what I would suggest as we kind of think back, and we're going to talk about the reactive or responsive steps in a minute. This is kind of back to the proactive steps. Here's a protocol that you could do with your staff or your team or your department to really help build this picture and this image of what high performance really looks like. Number one is brainstorm it together. And I'm a big fan of accessing the research. That's step 2 here. So look up what Marzano says about this stuff. Look up what John Hattie says about this stuff. Look up what the experts say about this instructional strategy or this curriculum, this, et cetera, and tap into our teachers' expertise and experiences. So much, bless you, of our work is so research-based but not practical experience-based that you've got teachers with dozens, and if you have a teaching staff of 45, 50, 125 staff members, multiply that times the number of years they've been teaching, you can have somewhere upwards of 1,000 years of teaching experience in the room with you. And why wouldn't we tap into that field of research, in addition to the published authors and the research studies and all that kind of stuff? So the more we can complement and couple those two together, we have a great opportunity to bring in the best of the research world, the best of our actual world, and then start to meld them as we build this picture of what high performance looks like. And then add, modify, delete. So let's figure out what are the ones that we believe, according to the research and according to our experience, are the highest yield approaches, the most effective strategies, the most accurate descriptors of what high performance looks like. And then we build that shorter list together and have that become our look-fors, have that become our identifiers, have that become part of the conversation we have. Make sure that we're providing professional development around those. Make sure that those are surfaced in our lesson planning sessions. Make sure that those are talked about during our PLC and our department and our team meetings, that those live and breathe way beyond just the beginning of the year. Hey, this is what I expect of you, and then I'm going to just start doing that sometime around February, March, right? Start popping in and seeing how you're doing. We want to make sure that these live and breathe all year round. We inspect what we expect, right? Have you heard that expression before? If you expect it, you got to be there. You got to be there, you got to see it, you got to see if it's actually happening so that you can provide that feedback that you need. All right. A couple other things that I want to make sure that we are clear about before we go down the path of, okay, it's not working. And one is, you can go into any class, anyone in this room could go into any classroom of any teacher teaching any subject at any moment, and what you can see is what the teacher's doing, what the teacher's saying. You can see what the kids are doing, what the kids are saying, and you can figure out together what's going to be the outcome of this work, right? Who's going to learn what, what's it going to look like, et cetera. Here's the kicker. That's only the tip of the iceberg. What are the things that we can't see and observe when we go into a classroom in a walkthrough or in an observation session? What are the things that we don't know or don't notice just from watching and listening? Okay, so the relationships with school and home, connection with families, absolutely. Unless we're sitting in a parent meeting, yeah. Okay, we don't know what planning took place necessarily beforehand, whether what we're seeing is actually matching the plan. The why, right? Why did you choose this strategy? Why are you doing this? Why is this the activity that you've chosen? Okay, we don't know the why, the rationale. You might not know the specific needs of all the students, which might match, hopefully, matches the why, right?
After you see it, ask the teacher how they feel about how things went.
Okay, so we don't know if the teacher's impression of, is this going the way I want it to be going right now? Is everything going smoothly? Remember those lessons that everything goes smoothly? The ones that happen in our dreams but not in reality, right? What else don't we know?
What happened right before?
Okay, what happened right before? And I can tell you from my personal experience as a principal who did a lot of walkthroughs, that teachers always told me what happened right before. The exact thing that I was looking for that I didn't see happened right before. And then, again, right after. But it never happened while I was in there. I would hypothesize that also we have those coming up. And not only do we have, why did you choose this instructional strategy? One of the most powerful bits of information that I love to collect as a principal is what other strategies did you opt not to use? What else was on the table that you were thinking about? I could teach the lesson this way. I could lead this activity, but I'm not going to choose that one. I'm going to choose this one instead. Why did you choose that one, and why did you not choose this one? That's a really powerful piece of information to get at motivation. Our teachers' beliefs about kids, about their impact as a teacher, their own mental state, how they're doing, the confidence level that they've got, what they're afraid of. I guarantee you that when teachers are teaching a lesson and another person comes in the room, especially if that person is an evaluator, that a certain element of fear, a percentage of fear enters the equation no matter how confident and competent that teacher is. And we just need to be cognizant of that fact as well, that that's all very real. And the best way to get this information is how? Talk to them, right? Yeah, I heard a couple of you say conversation. Have some conversation, ask the questions, engage in this dialogue. And that can be, honestly, rather unpleasant sometimes. Because if you've got a teacher that you're struggling with, performance-wise, 4 times out of 5, you're also struggling with that person interpersonally. And so that's not a person you're going to necessarily want to seek out and spend more time with talking about their feelings and about their beliefs about kids, right? You want to just do the observation, document the thing, right? It turns out, what's the expression? Keep your friends close. And you keep your performance concerns closer? Yeah. We want to have more conversations with the folks that are struggling. We need to be connecting with them more so than the folks that are doing the amazing, great work in the classrooms as well. And that's a real challenge for us. All right. So I'm going to give you a couple of concretes now, a couple of things that when you have these bits that come up, and it happens, how do you handle it? So here's terminology that I learned that I thought was just fantastic. Number 1, help me understand. So when you see a performance concern, you see something that's an aberration, you see something that doesn't match expectations, you see something that is underwhelming in a classroom, use the phrase, help me understand. I noticed this when I was in your classroom. Help me understand, and then lay it out there. This is what it was. This is what I saw. This is what I'm wondering about. Help me understand, and then the follow-up after the person, and I'm sorry. The next thing to do is to use our favorite tool, which is called wait time. Right? How many of you have ever tried to jump in and rescue somebody once you've asked a tough question? Okay, help me understand why the kids in the back were sleeping. Is it because they were really tired? Is it because they had a long night last night? Is it because their parents were fighting? I mean, is that what it was? Because if that's what, I totally understand, right? Or, help me understand what's going on in the classroom. You're teaching a lesson, you got 2 kids asleep in the back. I noticed that. Help me understand what's going on there. Because that person's got to go through then. If one of the 2 of you is going to be uncomfortable in a tough conversation, it really oughtn't be you, right? It should be the person that's struggling and had 2 kids sleeping in the back of the room. That's the person that should be uncomfortable and should be able to then talk his or her way out of it or talk his or her way into circles and tie themselves up with it. Then our follow-up is this. Well, let me help you with this. Let me give you an idea. Let me offer you a strategy. Let me get you a resource. Let me see if our instructional coach can come in. Let me see if there's some way that we can provide assistance. Or sometimes let me help you. Let me help you understand that that's not meeting expectation. Right? Our expectation that all the kids are awake and engaged and, learning in class. And so that's not going to work. So if you need ways to keep kids awake in class, I'm more than happy to provide some suggestions for you. This language, my friends, I'm telling you, this key phrases, and I've used them 1,000 times in my career, even when it's not necessarily a performance concern. It's just, hey, help me understand what's going on over there. A lot of times because we don't know. All that stuff that happens under the tip of the iceberg is going on in the classroom. We don't know it, and we sometimes let our inner monologue tell us what's going on without actually having the conversation to find out from the real participants in the equation. So when we take ourselves out of it, and we'll talk about that in a second, we actually get facts. And when we have facts, then we can operate effectively off of that. So that's one, those 2 phrases. Here's the next one. Scratch the word but right out of your vocabulary. Just delete it, and every time you use the word but, insert the word and. instead. Because if you think grammatically of the role of but, it's to separate two ideas. It was a beautiful day, but the clouds were coming, right? Two separate ideas. And it almost has us discount the first idea as untrue once the second idea is posed. Oh, that was a really great lesson, but you cannot say another thing that would actually validate that that was a really great lesson. Because our focus is going to be on all the things that actually weren't great about the lesson. Try that with your spouse. Oh, that's a beautiful dress, honey, but no, you can't get out of that. There's no way out of that, right? When you replace it with and, grammatically and connects two ideas. It shows partnership. Oh, that was a really great lesson, and I'm wondering why two kids were asleep in the background missing it, right? When we operate under and connection, we have the opportunity to show partnership. Hey, I'm on your side here. Things were going well, and then this happened. Help me understand what was going on there. As opposed to, oh man, things were going well, but then, and now we're arguing. And if the person doesn't agree that that's what happened, it's, no, that didn't happen, no, or that's not what was going on, or it's an argument. And we don't need to get in an argument about it because we're talking about facts. We want to get and peel back the layers of the artichoke to figure out, why was that happening? Help me understand that situation. And it's got to be about partnership. It's got to be about partnership. So scratch but, insert and. Well, that didn't sound right. That didn't sound right at all. Delete that from the video. Delete the word but from your vocabulary. Make sure you use the word and as often as possible. That's kind of where I was going with that. Thank you so much. All right. So speaking of the elephant in the room, let's address the elephant in the room. It's not that one, though. It's a little bit of a different elephant in the room. Number one. And this is from an article by Marlene Chisholm in a Smart Brief back in the day. And these I found were fantastic steps. So let's just put yourself in this hypothetical situation. You look at your card again, you look at your situation, you visit a classroom, and you see something that bothers you. It strikes a chord, the hair on the back of your neck stands up. You're like, this isn't good performance. This shouldn't be happening. This isn't right. And then it's in your head. You're thinking about it. Your content, what was going on there? Why was that happening? That shouldn't be happening. Oh, no, I'm frustrated with this teacher. This is not good. This is not good. And you keep telling yourself all the stories. It needs to be out of your head. You should not be the one that's uncomfortable with this performance concern. So schedule a meeting with the person and have the conversation. Use the phrase and, or use the connection word and use help me understand, let me help you. Use that, put it out there on the table. Then it's no longer just something that's just eating at your head. You know that expression, living rent-free in someone else's head? We can't let someone else's performance concern live rent-free in our heads because it drives us batty. We can't sleep at night. It irritates you all the way home on the drive home. You're thinking about it as you walk in the hallways of your building. You continuously tell yourself the story about what's going on and how frustrated you are. Step number two is once you've had the meeting is you actually ask about it. And so your narrative about, oh, maybe she was just having a bad day, or maybe he was just angry about that. And that kid is a pain in the neck, so I would have used sarcasm and yelled at him too maybe. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have done. Instead of doing that, ask. Help me understand. Put it out there. Once it's on the table, you can talk about it freely. If it's not on the table, it's just something that's bugging you the whole time. Step number three, own your stuff, is the reality that, hey, I'm frustrated with this. This upsets me as a supervisor, as an evaluator, that I'm trying to establish this environment that is positive and healthy for kids and positive and healthy for staff. And when I have performance concerns, that weighs on me. This is something that I really, I'm frustrated with this. And you have to own your own emotional reaction to it. You have to own your own perspective and your role in this partnership. And put it out there also for your person to talk about. And then to set a positive intention and to go back to what's our goal in this process. And I would say that slide I had a minute ago about we're going to do our darndest to help this teacher until there's no more blood left in that turnip, that we share that with that person in that moment. And say, my job is to help you, to support you because we've got kids in the equation and they deserve our very best. And I'm going to help you to the ends of the earth until there's no more earth left. And we put that out there from the get-go. And I think Marlene's advice is really good about that, about being transparent, about being clear, about being honest, and about being direct and putting it on the table. Let's see. Another concrete that I want to share with you is when there's a performance concern, name it directly. And so I'm a big advocate of this, and I coach and mentor administrators often, and I tell them, use this exact phrase. If and when I ever have a concern with your performance, I will tell you, I will use these words. I have a concern with your performance. And then I'm going to name it. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. And I'm going to match it directly to the expectations we've already set. And until you hear me use the words, I have a concern with your performance, then we're good. You're good, you're fine, you're meeting expectations. You can operate off the assumption that you're doing just fine. You're going to be renewed, you're going to get passing evals, etc., whatever the metrics are. And as soon as I use the words, I have a concern with your performance, we're going to change our working relationship a little bit. It's necessarily going to change to a focus on how are we going to improve this, how are we going to fix this, how are we going to move this forward. And then when it's actually time, follow through and actually use the words. Say them. I have a concern with your performance. Think about for a second what this does with the faculty, with the team, with the department. Remember the old head in the sand, the ostrich? I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to get people upset. So I'm I'm trying to build relationship, trying to build culture. Can't have a performance concern. Guess how many people in the staff already know that there's a performance concern? Everybody, right? Everybody on your staff knows who the teachers are that are doing a great job and knows who the teachers are that are not carrying their weight and knows who, right? So they also know that we as supervisors are not addressing that situation, which means we have a cultural issue going on already. So if we're trying to build relationships and develop a strong culture by ignoring performance concerns that everybody else sees, we're going in the exact opposite direction that we want to go in. So as soon as we tell our staff this at the beginning of the year, and I say repeat this early and often, especially as eval season comes up, we repeat this over and over again. Hey, we're fine until I use the expression, I have a concern with your performance, and if you haven't heard that yet, you're good. And then when you use the expression with Amanda, and you say, Amanda, I have a concern with your performance, and here's what it is. Amanda may go back and tell all her colleagues, oh my gosh, that principal said I got a concern with your performance. And guess what the colleagues are thinking? Well, yeah, it's probably about time. Yeah, you needed to hear that. I'm sorry I didn't share that with you first, right? And they're actually then thinking, what are they thinking about themselves and their own performance? I haven't heard it. I haven't heard that phrase from the administrator yet, from my evaluator. I have a concern with your, I must be doing okay. And they're also thinking, oh, that person's trustworthy. Because he or she said, I will use the phrase, I have a concern with your performance, and now has followed through and actually done that in a place that is absolutely accurate and deserved. And since it hasn't happened here, I can trust that since I haven't heard it, that I actually am doing okay. It actually creates that sense of peace and that culture that we want to establish of trustworthiness and safety and security that we tried to do by not addressing it. Now we actually do it by addressing it. Does that make sense? I'm telling you. Okay. One more concrete I want to share with you, and that's this is a FICA method. You know how we in education love our acronyms? I'm going to give you one. I hope you're okay with it. We're going to have one more acronym, FICA. This is when we name it, there comes a point where maybe we have to document it, that this is something that actually happened and we had a conversation about it. So the FICA method is the MCGRATH approach. There was an attorney named McGrath that came up with this. It's a pretty defensible way to share a written documentation of you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm having a hard time talking right now. So so you're writing a memo. Okay, that's the setting. It's a 4-paragraph memo. The first paragraph are the facts. This is what I observed. This is what I saw. This is what I noticed. This is what I've heard. This is the outcome. This is what actually happened. Done. No emotion in that. No judgment in that. This is what I observed at this time on this day. You said these words to this kid. This kid responded by doing such and such. I observed this happen. I heard about this from 7 children. Blah, blah, blah. Facts. Paragraph 2 is the impact. As a result, multiple students came to me upset, feeling you were using sarcasm, you were demeaning kids, that you were insulting them, that they did not feel comfortable in your presence, et cetera, whatever the impact might be, this is how the facts are negatively impacting our environment, or this is why it's a performance concern, is that second paragraph. The C, the context, is here's the expectation. We've set this expectation in the past. We've done professional development about this. We've had a speaker come in and talk to us about using sarcasm in the classroom. We've addressed classroom management and creating a culture of safety. These are the expectations. This is the rubric. This is the language we've used. This is all the supports that we've used. I have talked to you as a staff about this. I've talked to you individually about this 3 times on 3 different occasions before. The context, what exactly has preceded this event? And then the 4th paragraph is, here are my expectations for you now. This is what I would like you to do as a result. My expectations are that you do this, that you take care of this, that you go to this PD, that you meet with this person, that you cease and desist this kind of behavior. Whatever it is, we lay it out there. So when it comes time to write that memo, which does happen, following this template is a very clear and simple way. Because how many of you have ever written up somebody, documented somebody, and thought, gosh, how am I going to convey exactly what's going on and what I'm trying to do? And we struggle with that. When we have a clear template that we can use that pretty much gets us the things that we need to have out there. This is what happened. This is why it was impacted the school and the community. This is what we've done to kind of set up the stage beforehand. This is what I want you to do moving forward. Then you're good to go. All right. So that was a lot. There's a lot of me talking and you thinking, gosh, that's a lot of stuff. And it's a little overwhelming, and I totally get that. So what I'm asking you to do is to now go back armed with that information and your own experiences and your own mindsets and beliefs about this process. I want you to go back to your cards, back to your situations, and I want you to take 2 steps, if you could. Number 1 is think through it and think, where am I right now? Because, it would be great to be able to say, oh, well, we're going to set the expectation and clarify the expectation. I haven't really done that yet. Well, maybe that's your next step, is to clarify the expectations for this person. Or maybe you have done that, and it's time to have a serious conversation and have this person help you understand and then let you help them. Wherever you might be, I want you to contemplate and think about that and to put into that context, all the things that we've talked about and all the things I shared with you today, some of which are probably review and some might be new. And then if you are comfortable with this, I invite you to partner up with somebody and role play an actual conversation in this situation. So share with your partner, hey, here's my situation. Would you mind role playing this person for me? And then you practice any of the phrases, any of the approaches, laying down the expectation, talking about what might be next. Go through the FICA process with somebody orally if you want to. It gives you the opportunity to practice having some of those tough conversations. And if you have a willing conversation partner who'd be willing to kind of role play that role, you can give that person direction and say, totally challenge me. Argue with me on every point, right? So that you begin to be ready for how you would respond in those moments, professionally and accurately, with the mission in mind of helping until the ends of the earth, until there's no more blood left in that turnip. Does that make sense? All right, you willing to do that? Because I'm willing to come around the room and eavesdrop a little bit while you're doing it. So take what we've talked about, insert it into your thinking process, in your scenario, and then pair up with a neighbor and say, okay, here's my situation. Help me with this. Let me practice a little bit what I think is our next step. And if you have a question for me, wave me over. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of come around and eavesdrop while you're talking and chatting and see where we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right. I want to hear it. So we have a question. So let's push pause a second. Let's get the question. What's your question?
So our question is, hey, our question is kind of a little bit of a rabbit trail from our focus of those that maybe have a big performance issue, and setting up that a better culture or navigating the conversations better for teachers who maybe, very type A and want all fours, or if you give them something that you think might be a coachable area, then the sky is falling and they're not good and they think that, they're a bad teacher. And if they got a 3.85 on their evaluation, then something's wrong. How did you navigate your conversations with those teachers so that they felt supported and that it was okay for things to not be perfect?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I saw some nodding in the room as you were asking, so I believe that's probably a common theme. Well, you may or may not be surprised to learn that one of the schools that I took over as principal, the teachers were used to getting all 5s on their evals. Everything. Every teacher, and I'm not exaggerating, every teacher, all 5s across the board. And whether that was the going away present from the former principal or what, but I came in, I looked through the evals, and I said, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. These teachers are incredible. And so one of the first things I did is I started to lay the foundation from the get-go about my word, strive, and the idea that there's always room for improvement and there's always room for growth. And if we're going to have rubrics that describe performance, then we're going to match performance with the rubrics. And if everyone in this staff, in this room right now, is actually performing at a 5 across the board in every category, well then that's going to continue. And I said, and if reality strikes, and we find out that our performance isn't necessarily at optimal performance and 100% of our kids are mastering 100% of our standards 100% of the time, then we are going to have marks in the rubrics that more accurately depict what's going on in here, which is a fantastic opportunity for us to learn and to grow and to improve. And to just start laying that foundation and building that culture of mistakes and trial and error are things that we relish if we spend the time to learn from them and to do something about them. We cannot fail our way to success unless we're willing to learn from the failures and learn from the mistakes we make along the way. And so as long as we can start to open our heads to that and open our minds to that and start to truly live that philosophy, yeah, that's going to be a tall order for us. And if we're the guilty ones that have been giving our folks 5s this whole time because you try really hard and you're super nice, so all 5s, way to go. If we're doing that, it's much more difficult to come back and say, okay, so probably got a little excited on the 5s on that one, so let's dial it back and try to be. That's a harder conversation to have, but it's also a real conversation, especially if you own it and say, you know what, I wasn't really going off the rubrics. I really wasn't describing your performance. I was describing how much I like you and how the kids think you're a good teacher and the parents love you and you're always requested and there's a lot of positives and I just wanted to show positive and oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Professionally, I did not service you well. You need better feedback so that you can actually grow and move forward. There's an expression that I came to embrace a while back. It kind of goes like this. Beware the traveler who believes he has arrived. Right? So if you have a teacher that argues with you and says, I should be getting all 5s on this, you're like, all right, and then you should go do something else with your life. Because if you've mastered this and you can't learn anymore, you can't grow anymore, it's time to go. Yes, ma'am.
I would say that my people that actually deserve all 5s and the people that actually deserve all 5s and get all 5s always say to me, are you sure I'm a 5? Because I think I could be doing this and this and this better. And I can say, and that's why you're a 5. Like, you know that you have something to improve. So if you don't have that mindset, like that's one example of why you're not. You don't think there's anything you can get better at, that you're perfect at everything. Like, no one should be able to say yes to that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of an inverse relationship a lot of times with our self-assessments and our reality, where those of us who do really well at something always seem to find that there's room for growth, and so we don't give ourselves credit for how good we are at stuff. And folks that really aren't that good at something kind of inflate their own scores and give themselves credit for having done things because they've heard about it before, they tried it once. Yeah. So what, having gone through a little bit of a role play and a conversation with somebody and thought about some of these things, what is your takeaway from these 73 minutes? So respecting people from where they are, trying to avoid that mindset of I'm coming after you, and then meaning it in your language and in your approach and your body language and your time, actually meaning that you want to help this person get better. And I have coached people out of the profession before, and I've coached leaders who have coached people out of the profession before, and I tell you what, half I'm not going to exaggerate that, half have given me hugs and said, thank you so much, you're absolutely right, I need to be doing something else. The other half didn't quite see it that way, but half did. And it's amazing how much stronger that relationship can be when we're completely honest and upfront with each other and having some of those hard conversations. So, thank you. What else? Other takeaways? Yes, ma'am.
That was my takeaway, basically, genuine.
Same.
Be genuine, be honest, direct, strategic in how you deal with things, and you've got to be on the right path.
Yeah, be strategic, be honest, be genuine. Yeah. Have you all heard of this? Burnout? You ever heard of burnout before? Yeah, evidently it's real. Yeah. So as a kind of a parting gift for you, I'm going to give you an image, and I want you to be just kind of identifying with a bird up there on the right. And I want you to be thinking about what are you doing to make sure that you're staying off the bottom rung of that ladder? Are you doing the things professionally that fill you up, that inspire you? When you, like if you visit a classroom and you see underperformance, you're like, oh my gosh, this is killing me. Go to the other classroom across the hall where there's amazing performance and just get absorbed in that for a few minutes. And remind yourself of all the good there is rather than this. And then set up a meeting with that person to have that conversation, right? The QR code that's up here, by the way, I'll leave this up here so you can take a, you can do your deal with your phones on it. I wrote an article that's called The Instructional Leader's Most Difficult Job, and it's about addressing performance concerns in the workplace, and it was published by ASC. I didn't know ASCD published it. They actually keep track of how many people click on their articles. It was the number 3 article of 2019, so I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty good. I've broken the kneecaps of person number 1 and person number 2, so now it's number 1. Actually, I just broke their links. So feel free to check that out if you're interested. It kind of goes through the 4 strategies that don't work so much and the 5th one that does work pretty well. Feel free to come up and do your QR code closer if that helps. If you want to stick around and chat about a personal scenario or something that's going on, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, have a great lunch. If you're interested in coming back this afternoon to see me, oh, Courtney's going to say something, so don't get up yet. I'm doing 2 more sessions this afternoon. One is called Creating a Culture of Safety for Adults. That's related to the trauma work that Kristen and I were talking about yesterday and just kind of creating this environment. And then Keeping Burnout at Bay is the session I'm doing at the end of the day, kind of as a wrap-up for us. Thanks, everybody. Have a great lunch. Thanks for being at the conference. Thanks for coming to my session. And I will see you soon.